I'm not gonna do that. There we go. Okay. Hi. This is now the third year in a row that Chris has asked me to speak at this Christmas Fireside. And not long after accepting his invitation, this time around, I came to a terrible realization. I am running very, very low on Christmas memories. I used my go-to Christmas memory in year 1 and my backup in year 2. So I pivoted to another holiday and decided to share a story of the most heartwarming and inspirational Columbus Day that I ever spent. This story was just about a time that I tried to cash a check and the bank was closed because Columbus Day is a bank holiday. I decided against using that story and reluctantly decided to use my third string Christmas story. The reason this memory is third string is because it's actually rather painful. It's of the exquisite torture that I endured as a child waiting for Christmas Eve. While you never know it to look at them, my parents are actually terrible people. These awful, inhuman monsters who claimed to love me dictated that they couldn't be woken up on Christmas morning until 6 a.m. Our Christmas Eve tradition was for all my siblings to sleep in the same room. I still remember the agony of lying on the floor and watching the red digits on an alarm clock change from 1 minute to the next. I turned my head away from the clock at 2:47 a.m. and refused to check it until I was sure an hour had passed, only to find it was 2:49 a.m. The loneliest stretch was from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. when my weak and simple-minded siblings finally nodded off, leaving me as a lonely sentinel to ensure that we didn't sleep 1 millisecond past 6. And then, finally, we'd line up from youngest to oldest outside the family room and wait for my parents to make the final preparations, which, again, as terrible people, they insisted had to be just perfect before we could enter and open our gifts. At this point, my dad would realize he'd forgotten to assemble 3 bicycles. And my mom would start a fire, which, judging by how long it took her, she started by slowly rubbing together 2 pieces of very damp wood. These memories of waiting for a Christmas that seemed to never come reminded me of a story of a group of people who waited with similar anticipation for the arrival of the very first Christmas. In the Book of Mormon, we read of a prophet named Samuel who prophesied that the Savior of mankind would be born across the globe in Bethlehem, and that this wonderful event would be marked by a miracle in which the sun would set but no darkness would appear. Those who heard this prophecy fell into 2 groups, a group who believed it and a group who didn't. After some time had passed from when the prophecy was given, those who didn't believe mocked those who did, saying, "The time is past and the words of Samuel are now fulfilled. Therefore your joy and your faith concerning this thing has been in vain." The argument put forth by the doubters to the believers was very simple. They said, in short, you were waiting for Jesus to come, but he hasn't come, and by our accounting, the time during which he was supposed to come is past. That means he is never coming, and you should stop hoping that he will. In the face of this argument, the believers allowed a little doubt to creep in. According to our account, they began to be very sorrowful, lest by any means these things which had been spoken might not come to pass. Why do you suppose they were sorrowful? Why did they care whether Jesus came or not? I believe it's because each of these believers required deliverance from overwhelming personal trials of one kind or another. I'm certain that some of them wrestled with anxiety and depression. Others watched their loved ones suffer and die from grave illnesses. Some of them likely battled addictions that threatened to ruin their lives and families. Others undoubtedly found themselves unable to resist certain sins and carried great burdens of guilt. Still others surely had aching hearts, broken by their inability to get married or have children or by the actions of a loved one. All of them needed someone with great power to deliver them from their wounds and their weaknesses, their heartaches and their sins, their fears and their guilt. They needed their literal and metaphorical demons cast out. They needed their burdens lifted and their yokes made light. They needed, in short, what we all need, a Savior. And so when it seemed that perhaps the time was past and that their hopes of a Savior had been in vain, they sorrowed and they wavered. They wondered if perhaps the doubters were right. They had been waiting a long time. If he hadn't come yet, perhaps he wasn't coming at all. Perhaps they were alone. The argument that made these believers waver thousands of years ago is the same one that is employed today to make us waver as well. When you wait for the Savior to come into your life, to deliver you from the burdens of fear and sin and loneliness that you can't conquer on your own, you will hear a voice suggesting that the time is past, that your faith is in vain, that the Savior is not coming. Fortunately for us, the little group of believers who were watching for the first Christmas showed us how to respond to this voice. We are told that they did watch steadfastly for the events that would show that their faith had not been in vain. They refused to succumb to doubt and despair and kept their eyes fixed on the horizon for the arrival of Jesus. We are told that they also cried mightily unto the Lord, imploring the Savior to come and save them. In the end, the sign foretold of by Samuel was given, and Jesus was born in Bethlehem. He brought to pass his atonement that that little group of believers in the Americas, and this one here tonight as well, might be delivered. It is my prayer that as we wait for Jesus to heal and deliver us, that we will not give heed to the voice that tells us that the time has passed and that our faith is in vain. I know that if we will but watch steadfastly and cry mightily unto him, that he will come, just as he did on that very first Christmas. Thank you.